Thirsty for intelligent sports talk? Sounds like you need a little Gatorade. 103.3 The GOAT. The greatest sports talk of all time.
Great Scott!
The Great Scott Show.
And as they head into the final furlong, all of the other radio stations and radio hosts are left in the wake of a keen turn of speed by the Great Scott Show, the champion.
With Scott Prather.
Steal the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Great Scott Show. As promised, kicking off the 8 o'clock hour with me, play-by-play voice of the New Orleans Pelicans, Todd Graffagnini, the man, the myth, the legend, the thief. I got to call you out, Todd, every time I have you on, just briefly. Also, the thief. How are you this morning?
I'm great, Scott. Happy New Year, man.
Thank you. And for those that don't know the reference, everyone here knows Gus Cagney. He's been coming on with me every Friday for like 15 years. And I kind of thank Gus, for his time by sending him cracklins. And Gus just loves cracklins. Well, there was a Pelicans media day, I don't remember how many years ago, and I showed up with a big old bag of cracklins. And Gus wasn't there that day. I don't remember what. He had an appointment or something. And I said, Todd, shoot, I think this is when you were still the Tulane play-by-play guy. I said,
absolutely.
I said, you're gonna see Gus. Can you give him this? You're like, yeah, sure, no problem. Well, I noticed Gus we text and we're friends. Notice he usually sends a big thank you and a photo. I'm like, man, it's like been a couple days here. I'm like, hey man, did you get the goods? He's like, no. He's like, why didn't you send them? And I was like, you got to be kidding me. You totally just straight up lied to him. You're like, no, you didn't give it to me, and you just ate them all. So every time, I remember back when Frank Jackson was on the Pelicans, we were interviewing him, and like somehow he just stumbled into that conversation between the three of us, and he was very confused. And then I gave him a cracklin, and he's like, okay, I get it now.
Well, he should get him. That's why I crushed him. I mean, why would I give him the cat and go? I mean, they were basically just handed to me. I mean, I know I was supposed to give it to him, but no. I mean, it wasn't going to happen, Scott. I mean, those things never had a chance to leave my possession.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was kind of.
I apologize. I mean, the statute of limitations, I guess, was never going to run out on this, but. I admit it.
You proudly admit it. Todd, before we talk Pels, and I talk Pels on this show a lot and have for years, and I love the enthusiasm this year and how many calls and how much text and, just reaction I've been getting about the team for the last couple of months. Sometimes it doesn't come till, later in the year, but it's been there all season. But anyway, real quick, before we get to that, you were the play-by-play man for Tulane for how long?
Football, basketball for 12 years, and overall for 27. I started doing baseball there at 1992. So more than half my life was spent at Tulane University.
Well, there you go. I am close. Mrs. Fitz, who worked at Tulane for many years. I think there was a Crescent City article about it, and Miss Fitz, Laurelyn Fitzpatrick, she was a mother of a close friend of the family, and I was kind of thinking about them the other day. I had some friends that went to Tulane. I thought about you too, man. I mean, I went to Loyola. I wasn't, a Tulane fan per se, and I'm not trying to pretend to be one or anything, but I was genuinely happy for everybody that, had put in so much time. I mean, that's just a moment that felt so surreal, so unlikely. No one would have believed it before the season. You were over there in Philly getting ready to call the Pelicans game, but I think you just watched it on a TV in the arena there. What did it feel like for you, and what's the buzz been like about that historic win in the Cotton Bowl?
Well, first of all, Scott, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I love the job that I have. It's a dream come true, being able to call professional sports for a living. But I have admitted openly that I had major FOMO on Monday. I not even as a broadcaster, Scott. It just would have been tremendous just to be in the building. I mean, the Green Wave is in tremendous hands now with Corey Glorin, Steve Berrios, and Matty Hudak. I mean, they do a fantastic job. I listen to every game. I listened the other day. I was in my hotel room for the first three quarters, and pacing like a madman and screaming, and everybody who was on the floor probably heard me. And then, I got to watch the last 5 minutes on the media entrance television, just inside the Wells Fargo Center. And the security people literally thought I was an insane person because I was, especially when, the call got overturned and the touchdowns there, and I'm just yelling, and these people are like, "Who is this guy, and why is he looking at this television with Tulane?" I mean, what would they know up in Philadelphia? I'm going crazy. And then, of course, just the way it ended, it just, oh man, surreal, just absolutely surreal. And those are the type of games, and I was thinking about this much later in the, that night when I was kind of reflecting on everything. Those are the kind of endings that would go against Tulane all the time. And I'm thinking, if I'm one of those USC players, and if look at all the statistics and the fact that they have 600 yards of offense and didn't punt one time, and you've got the Heisman Trophy winner, and look, I've been in that situation on the other end, just being on the plane, going back home, and if you're USC, you got to be going, how in the hell did we just lose that game? Seriously, how did we just lose that game? But the simplest thing I can say, Scott, is that's the Tulane Green Wave in 2022. They just got it done. They figured it out. They had a tremendous leadership, player-wise. Of course, Coach Fritz, who, by the way, was at the game last night.
Yeah.
In the Smoothie King Center, and a bunch of his staff was there, and they show, they put Coach Fritz on the board. They had a little video montage of the game and the trophy, being presented and the confetti coming down, and they show Coach Fritz on the video board, and the place went crazy. And I'm thinking to myself, you got to be kidding me. I am in complete and utter bizarro world right now, because the best part about all of this, Scott, and again, I was a Tulane fan when I was a kid. I grew up 5 minutes from the university. I went to Loyola too, but I played baseball, and always wanted to go to Tulane. Never had a chance. 3 of my brothers played baseball at Tulane. So again, I'm a lifer. Even despite that, I've worked there, but I was a fan before I ever worked there. And I'm thinking to myself, the best part in the grand scheme of this whole thing is that Tulane University, especially the football team, completely lost a generation of fans. Guys like me, you're in the later half of life here. You don't see 8, 9, 10-year-olds wearing Tulane shirts around the city of New Orleans. You're an LSU fan for the most part, or a Saints fan. You're not rooting for Tulane. Well, in the last month, I have seen more Tulane paraphernalia on kids, teenagers. The student body has completely bought in again. That's the best part about all of this, is now the city of New Orleans, which again, LSU, Saints, now the Pelicans are to the forefront. The city of New Orleans is now bought into their local team. And that type of stuff cannot be bought money-wise. That is priceless. And the amount of free publicity and advertising that Tulane got in the last month, we had 4 consecutive national television games where basically they were the only game in town. 2 of those games were on ABC. One of them was the conference championship game, where at the end of the game, the entire stadium basically rushed the field. And then, of course, you had the game on Monday, and you have the most incredible comeback that, Tulane fans have ever seen. And people around the country are looking at this going, wow, that's a pretty cool place. That's got to be a lot of fun to be at. But on the local level, that is the key, Scott, because, if you're 20 years old, 25 years old, you don't give a rat's patoot about Tulane University. If you're 10 years old, you don't care. Well, that's not the case anymore. And that, to me, in the grand scheme of things, is the best part about all of this. Tulane has got a new generation of fans, and it's a pretty awesome thing to witness.
Todd Graffagnini, our guest, 103.3 The GOAT simulcast on 1420. We often talk about winning and winning culture and building it and what it can do for a program. You know, we cover UL a ton, and we talk about it with the Cajuns. And you mentioned Tulane and potentially a new generation of fans. Certainly they have a moment right now. And Todd, I mean, it's just an old saying in sports, but it is always perpetually. It will never change. Everyone loves a winner. If you win, guess what? They're going to show up. And that team that, that you're the play-by-play voice of, a team that I have followed for 20 years. I did, I got to audition to be the PA announcer in the New Orleans Arena back in the day when they were the Hornets. And their first year in town, I was helping with Cox Sports Television and, on the court behind the cameras with the wires. I mean, I was in college and now as an adult and working in radio. And just in covering this team for 20 years, there have been little pockets where there's interest outside of the hardcore fan base, right? I mean, you talked about your passion for Tulane. You always had your hardcore fans, but it almost felt like a subgroup, not a big group. And in covering this team, that's kind of what it's felt like for a while. And then last year, man, you started to kind of see it as they play their way into the play-in. And I'm like, look, I've seen stuff before. I remember when everyone was gaga for Chris Paul, and I remember season tickets the following year. And I remember, when they swept Portland, and then next year they started 4-0, and then, it kind of all went off course, and AD was looking to get out. And I don't have to rehash everything. You know all the history, Todd, but my point is, you've got a team that's winning right now. You've got a team that has players that have a real, authentic, organic relationship with the fan base that was not marketed a certain way. It just kind of happened. And so you've got a pocket right now that, in my opinion, feels really sustainable. Because in the past, it could be sustainable, but A, B, and C needs to happen. And you got to convince this guy to stay, and you got to do this. You're not thinking about, oh, God, if this doesn't happen, then this won't. You're just in it, in the moment. Even with, Brandon Ingram not having played since November 25th, even with Zion currently on the shelf, you've got the deepest team in the league. For you to sort of be a part of it and be in that, in that practice facility and be part of the organization, what is the city like over there? And this, to me, I've been saying it for a while now. It just feels so different this year. It feels like unlike anything we've ever seen.
No question, Scott. Look, I mean, I've said this and I'm laughing because it's true. I mean, we are in a complete and utter bizarro world in the city of New Orleans. I mean, in the last 3 weeks, it has been harder. I was talking to Matt Thomas, who's the voice of the Houston Rockets, who I know very well because he was the voice of the Houston Cougars prior to that. So I've known Matt for a long time. And, I'm going to tell you what I told him last night. It's been harder to get into the Smoothie King Center than it has been the Superdome to watch the Saints. And he's like, you got to be kidding me. I said, no, that's the world we're living in right now. This city has gone completely Pell's crazy. I got stopped. I walk 5 miles a day. I got stopped in Audubon Park a couple of days ago after we got home from Philly the next day, as a matter of fact, on Tuesday. And I'm walking in the park, and some random guy stops me. I mean, I don't know this person. He goes, hey, man, how's Zion? How's he doing? I'm like, who are you? I'm like, seriously? But, I mean, how did he recognize me? I'm on radio, man. I love being on radio because nobody can recognize me, Scott. It's a beautiful thing. But this guy knew who I was. And he's like, how's Zion's hamstring? I'm like, I hope he's okay. But that in essence is it. I mean, people are talking Pelicans here. We just had our 10th sellout last night, Scott. Again, midweek against a team that is last in the Western Conference in the Houston Rockets, with no Zion, no B.I., no Larry Nance. Frontline guys sell out. A couple of Mondays ago, we played the Pacers the day after Christmas. Nobody was in the lineup. McCollum wasn't there, and wound up selling that game out. That's when it really, really hit me that this is really, really cool to be a part of. Every night in that arena has become like a playoff game. That's the type of atmosphere that we have. And, last night's win made the home record 17-4, which is the best start to a home schedule in the history of the franchise. We really have never had a home court advantage like this. Going back really about the 2010 season was the last time they started out this well at home. But the games weren't sold out like they were or like they have been going back to the end of last year and the carryover now to this year. It's an event. Every single night in that arena, people want to be a part of it. And usually, as you talked about, and I know Gus has talked about this on the show, it is a truly organic love affair that was not marketed. I mean, you got to understand, Scott, and I know you do because you follow the team. Last year, the Pelicans never even sniffed 500. We ended the season 36-46. Mm-hmm. People don't realize that. We were able to make a run late and just kind of get into the play. And I mean, we were the 9-10 game. It wasn't like, we were 7-8 or even close to 6. Nowhere near that. But we won enough to get into that play-in situation against the Spurs and, of course, won that home game where that's when you started to see, like, the true, playoff type of atmosphere. But I've said this many, many times. That game against the Clippers in L.A., the play-in game, to me, is the biggest win in the history of this franchise because to win that game and to have the entire city watching, staying up late, while that game's in L.A. and everybody's back here, watch parties, the bars were packed. I've seen the videos. And to win that game and to get into the playoffs and to take on the Phoenix Suns and get 3 home games and play the Suns as tough as anybody could play them, you bowed out. But for those young guys to get the playoff experience that they got was invaluable. And it really, you had Jonas and CJ and Larry Nance. Those guys had been in the playoffs before, but nobody else in the roster had been there. And for them to get a taste of it and to experience what playoff basketball was all about, there is no question in my mind that was the kind of jump start to what we're seeing right now. Because, you get into the offseason, you're like, man, that was a lot of fun. We need to do that again. And everybody got to work in the offseason, and here we are now. And it's just been remarkable considering the amount of injuries that we've had and the fact that your, star players, quote-unquote star players, have only played 8 games together. It's crazy. It's crazy. But, yeah, it's a truly remarkable thing that we have witnessed here in New Orleans. And, look, it's January. We got a long way to go before the season's, going to come to a close. And there's a lot of games to play. But I tell you what, it's you're an opponent walking into the Smoothie King Center, you're going to have a battle on your hands no matter who's in the lineup because the team is feeding off the crowd and the crowd is feeding off the team. It's a beautiful thing to witness.
Todd Graffagnini, our guest, Great Scott Show, 103.3 The GOAT simulcast on 1420. You mentioned the win over the Clippers being the biggest win in franchise history because of what it, not just getting into the playoffs and the experience that, the roster got being in a series, but the carryover for the fans as well. You talk about the environment. I got my 2 brother-in-laws, 2 nephews, and my son. We got them tickets for Christmas to a Pelicans game. We drove over for the game against the Timberwolves, and let me tell you something. Them seeing Zion take over, being a part of that environment in the upper bowl. I mean, guess what? My oldest nephew, on my side of the family. He's about to turn 13. The next day, he's like, Scott, can we watch the end at your house? I'm like, sure. I record the games. I'm like, let's do it. I mean, they are fans now, and they don't even live here. I mean, my son does. He's a fan, but he's 7. But like now, there's adults, there's other kids in other places, and that environment in December against Minnesota. I'll be at the game tomorrow against Brooklyn, and let's kind of look at this team, sort of where they go, and then I'll let you leave, Todd, and I appreciate you taking the time. But let's kind of just look at the team, where it stands and where it's going on the basketball court. This game tomorrow night obviously is going to be tough without Zion and BI. It's the road trip that I'm thinking about. Because the crazy thing is, there isn't a single team in the Western Conference, not a single team that has a winning record on the road right now as we speak. Not one. In the East, there's a few. One of them's Brooklyn, who's got the best road record in the league, by the way, and they're the team coming in. But for the Pelicans, you're 7-10 on the road, and you're about to embark on a long road trip, and I want to say 8 of 9 on the road, and you're not going to have Zion. Don't know if you're going to have BI for this road trip. I mean, I do think the Pelicans are the deepest team in the league, but role players usually play a little better at home than on the road. I mean, this feels like, in the grand scheme of a long schedule, Todd, and how kind of jam-packed, the top 5-6 teams are in the West, this upcoming, these next 2 weeks, it's going to make a gigantic difference whenever we get to April and we're like, okay, are the Pels hosted in the first round or are they traveling? I think these next 2 weeks are going to go a long way into determining that.
I agree 100%. Very, very perceptive. Look, it's going to be very difficult. I mean, look, we talk about the schedule makers all the time. I mean, you got a back-to-back with Brooklyn tomorrow night, and then we go to Dallas to take on Luka and the Mavericks. And the Mavericks have won 7 games in a row. So, I mean, those are the next 2 games. But that game in Dallas, obviously, starting the trip. I mean, we're going to be gone for 10 days. And, after the Dallas game, we go to Washington, where, I joke with Jim Eichenhofer, who does a great job writing for Pelicans.com. Washington is a house of horrors for the Pelicans organization. Mm-hmm. We have not won there since 2010. We've lost 12 games in a row up there. So that's going to be a difficult place to play. Then you go to Boston. I don't have to tell you about the Celtics. And then you go to Detroit and Cleveland. Now, Cleveland, obviously, they've got a host of players, and, of course, led by Donovan Mitchell, just scored 71 the other night. But Detroit's not going to be easy either. They just beat Golden State in San Francisco last night. The Detroit Pistons did. So, look, it's going to be tough. It really is. And it's just you just gotta figure out a way to get some wins on the road. It has been difficult away from home, but like you said, it's been like that around the league, and that's why these home games are critical. No matter who you're playing, you've got to take care of your business at home because it is so difficult to win on the road. We're going to see. You're going to have to play like you did last night, and like you said, it's difficult because those role players, not quite the same type of production that you see on the road than you do at home, but the kind of effort that you had last night, and I know it got a little crazy at the end of the game when a 31-point lead got down to 7 very quietly. But, you had 6 in double figures last night, and Herb Jones had 9 points. You have to make up the scoring that you lose with Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram. I mean, that's 50 points that you're not getting every night. And the way Zion was playing, he was averaging 30 in the last, 2.5 weeks. So you've got to make up the scoring output with everyone. Everyone has to get involved. And you saw that last night, at least for the first 2.5 quarters you saw it. But when McCollum left the game and when Valanciunas left the game because we had such a big lead, the scoring just went away. We had a time frame, Scott, that we had 12 minutes of basketball, which is obviously 1 quarter in the NBA, where the Pelicans scored 6 points last night. 6 points in 12 minutes. That can't happen, obviously. Now, you got away with it because you were playing the Houston Rockets, who's the worst team in the league. But that ain't going to fly against the Brooklyn Nets, and it's certainly not going to fly against any team that we're going to play on the road in the next 2 weeks. So, it's just tough, man, because, when those two guys are not playing and we haven't seen them, together since November 25th, and I'm talking about Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram, when those two guys aren't on the floor, you've got to find a way to get the ball in the hoop. Now, McCollum has picked up the slack. CJ struggled for a while because he was, coming back from illness, but he has found, and he really started the game last night quickly, and that was big. But that's one guy. When he leaves the floor, how are you going to make up that scoring? And, the thing that makes the Pelicans so difficult when everybody is healthy is that Willie Green can substitute, two guys in, one guy out, and you're always going to have a scorer on the floor, a pure scorer. And that's not going to be the case now for as long as at least Zion's out. Hopefully B.I. is really getting close. He's on the court. He's just not quite ready to start practicing yet. But, it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be tough. But those role guys, the Alvarados and the Hayes and the Daniels and the Hernan Gomez's and Devontae Graham, those guys have really got to pick up their scoring if you're going to, keep this thing above water in the next couple of weeks and really before you get Brandon Ingram back, because we're going to, it's going to be 3 weeks minimum before Zion comes back. So you're going to have to make it up somehow, some way.
Todd Graffagnini has been our guest. Todd, little Hornet/Pels history for you. You mentioned the last time they actually won in Washington. It was January 1st, 2011, and the reason I remembered the game is I don't remember every game ever, but it was a game where Trevor Ariza had, I guess, the dunk of his career. They were wearing the yellow NOLA, whatever the equivalent of City Edition was back then. They were in those yellow NOLA ones, and I think he had he scored 22 that night. He led all score. It was probably his best game in a Hornets uniform, and it was wow, they rarely win there. Anyway, he and Marco Bellinelli were in the starting lineup that night. Aaron Gray, got some runs. So it's been a long time. Willie Green, by the way, played in that game for the Hornets. So it's been a while since they've won in Washington.
There you have it.
It's a tough one. If you just want to throw out a couple of little zingers on the radio broadcast in D.C. there, Todd, man, look, I appreciate you taking the time. I know, you're up late with these games and with, the life of a play-by-play guy, but safe travels next week, man. And I'm glad you and your Tulane brothers and sisters got to enjoy that one last week, and we'll be listening to you on the airwaves. You can catch Pelicans basketball on the radio here in Lafayette and the Acadiana area on Talk Radio 960 as Todd Graffagnini is on the call there. Hopefully the Shazier can be well and get back soon. But in the meantime, man, all the best. Appreciate the time, and maybe I'll send you some cracklins, but if I do, just don't tell Gus.
Well, you read my mind, Scott. I mean, if you're coming to the game tomorrow, feel free. I'm at the top of section 112. I mean, you know where I am.
They going to let me carry that in? I mean, you're going to have to get me special access.
Oh, you know what? You might have to smuggle it in.
Because I'm not going with the media. The wife and I are going. We're just, we're going to stay in New Orleans for the night. It was a birthday present. I'm a year older this week, so I don't know, man. I don't know if they're going to let me sneak those cracklins in. Maybe I'll try.
We're gonna have to figure something out, man.
All right,
I
man.
need some cracklins.
Appreciate it, Todd. All the best, my friend. Thank you.
You got it, man. You got it.
That is Todd Graffagnini, play-by-play voice on the radio for the New Orleans Pelicans. Good memories, good breakdown of what's to come, and just a good description of the current state of the team and how the fan bases react and everything else. If you want to follow Todd on Twitter, it's at @NTGraff, at NTGRAFF, radio voice of the Pelicans.